back, everybody. So back to layout design here, and I took a break. Yeah. So forest giraffe meets tree climbing goat. Well, I decided this week to take a break and go up to the mountains and visit my friend Paul's house. He's a timberman. He's been a logger for 48 years. Had some chili beans with the guy, and we talked about nature, the trees, forests, and all sorts of things. And I thought, yeah, the next assignment I'm going to set is going to involve trees. And so this exercise here, I'm thinking about a particular scene up in the mountains when I went to visit that day. And basically the breaks in the forest line, the little glades. And so I'm going to show a technique here how to quickly block in this scene, and that again is important, is speed. I'm using a broken part there of the charcoal stick, or the vine charcoal or willow charcoal, whatever you want to call it. It's so beautiful and soft, and it applies so quickly. So I'm jamming it down really quickly to get the tonal values that I want. So blending in here is important. So look at that already. The softness looks like something already, doesn't it? Something abstract. And at the beginning, when you're blocking things in very quickly like this, there is an abstraction to things. And we're of course trying to get something representational, not abstract. But it's important to note at the beginning that look and feel you're going for is just kind of like this foggy shape. You're not trying to get anything precise. Remember, macro, big, to micro, small. Do not start off with detail. Do not start off with micro. So here now I'm just distinguishing the boughs of the trees. That day up in the Oregon mountains in the north. We were fairly high up when I was having a chat with Paul, and it was such a beautiful day, and I was just thinking about the values when we're up with the clear air and the mountain air, and how do you make these values work as trees against the sky? And how do you work with showing that there's near and far? And so the boughs that are near are darker. So we're playing with a value system here for our scene. And I'm setting a stage. I'm also treating this like a stage on a theater. And the stage in that I have my props, and then I'm going to add the main characters, which is going to be a giraffe and a goat. So look at already the feeling of depth in that scene. Okay, very, very quickly. There's debris there down the bottom right, and that technique is kind of a vignetting technique. It's drawing the eye so that the detail is going to be going towards the point where I want the light hitting the main subject, which hasn't been done yet. So there's more trees, but you notice that when I put down another level, it's creating a little bit more information for the viewer. Now there was an old gnarly tree I was looking at close to Paul's cabin. Very, very strange growth on it. He was explaining the type of tree that was and how important it is to the biodiversity of a particular area. And they're very rare when they're growing in the forest, these types of trees. But very, very crucial to everything else. And anyway, that tree caught my eye. And you notice it's darker, as are the other props in the scene, which are darker because they're closer. So the values are important to get this effect and get it quickly. Is near and far. The further things go away, they're lighter. And even less detail. So there were leaves and different things growing on this tree. So I'm trying to get a rhythm and a flow here and not worry too much. But the way the branches come up, the way they're kind of uneven, as they go out, then gravity starts to push them down more. So I'm trying to get the feel, the essence of this, more so than trying to copy it. Again, the eraser, that dumping in the highlights like that, that's important. Trying to think of the ferns and different things that grow on the forest floors that I saw, the different vegetation. And I'm not too worried about the accuracy of those plants, but just the essence, just getting the idea that the forest floor is populated by this flora type, and the leaf shape, maybe a little bit more care on that I'll try and get. Now these deciduous, there's some deciduous on the left with that big tree, but on the right, we have these fern trees, and that contrast creates more visual interest, and having at least two different types of tree. But what fascinates me are those big vertical lines and the way that the light comes through. So trying to get the shape now of the leaf. And I'm really trying to feel my way here. I'm thinking of the little the plants from memory there. So again, if you're struggling with that, just get some photos or search on the internet for flower types in the forest, and then you can quickly gesture those into your scene. So be good with your research when you need it, and always use it. And this is kind of not only smoothing the carbon. If I press harder, I take more of the carbon off and into the handkerchief. And then going darker again, but it's spontaneous and fluid. Do you notice that with my marks? And again, that is coming through practice. You're learning a trade, you're learning a technique. So be spontaneous, be fluid. And you shouldn't probably be pressing too hard. Now I get that line down there at the bottom. I want to really pull you into the picture, the darker areas, especially bottom left and bottom right. It's a device, and it's a way of getting your eye to lead in to the area I want, which you can see already with that gap I've left. Center left. The center left is where I'm going to put me characters. And so this characters, see that? Yeah, who needs a zoo? I've got all my plastic animals, and they're great models. So that fella, I'm trying to think, where to place him. Right, she's head up, so he's a model that's been sculpted for eating the vegetation, right? So he's maybe, I can change it later on, but maybe he's eating some of the leaves. Maybe. Again, do you see my schema? They're the 5 basic shapes that I've used through this. So from my character design class, you can see how I'm using that in this. I don't drop it because it's a different picture. It's pretty consistent. And because of that, look how quick it is. Because I know those 5 basic shapes. So the only difference is here I have to consider, what angle is it? I've kept it at a simple angle. It's side view. Put his tail flicking up, makes it more interesting, like he's flicking a fly or something away. You can see the leg design, just very gestured. Don't do them straight down. Looks like a drain. So a little bit of bend in the leg makes all the difference. And there's me goat, tree climbing goat. And okay, I got to replace here. This is the other challenge with staging for your layout when you're putting your characters in. It's another level of complexity. But practicing that level of complexity is what's going to make you good and hone your skills, hone your craft, hone your trade. So I'm going to put the branch a bit further down, of course. So when he's leaning up, he's making contact with the goat. Again, got my schema. Look at that schema shape. That'd be number 3 on my video. And that goat's been eaten a lot. So, again, I block it in quickly at the beginning, and it just gives me a loose reference. And then once I've blocked it in, then I start to go back and redesign it. You can see how I changed it the first time. Look at all those marks around it. Adds to the texture, right? Don't ever see them as mistakes. They're not mistakes. What you're doing is you're evolving a process. It's about iteration. You're constantly changing and refining the idea. But we got the shapes in place and it was pretty fast, right? Trying to get that flowing sweep all the way up to the goat. And yeah, I didn't like that much. Again, iteration, but I kind of know where it should be because of now I'm a 3rd attempt on the goat. Then once you see the blocks I'm putting in there, you know what I'm doing, you know why they're those shapes, right? So those 5 basic primitive shapes are my schema to help me block in my quadruped. Yep. I needed the branch lower, I guess. I'm going to have the sun there and make it a real interesting point, like a focal point of the painting. And in terms of staging, maybe maybe I should move it a bit lower down, maybe, but it's not a big deal. I'll just keep going with this, I think, and yeah, let's see how this works out. And then this is the thing about this concept stage, the layout, is you try something out and it might not be exactly right, but you've got enough here to do another one. So that's the way to see this. This idea that you're throwing down here might be one of a dozen or more ideas for this one scene, an important scene in a film, animation, or a game. So that's how you've got to see these, is get the idea down, evaluate it, decide on whether you think it might be a key point in the story that you're developing, or whether you just have to do more versions. But the essence of the idea you're sort of happy with. And I'm having a lot of fun here because I'm really just playing with this idea, and I think this is the way really you should approach it, fun. And it's really, I'm just enjoying trying to figure out how to make this picture work. So a lot of it, I confess to it becoming a muscle memory that's spontaneous. Okay, so T, yeah, this is the T, magic stuff is T, magic stuff. So this will help with some of the darker tones, and look how much they've popped out of that. forest floor. Look at that. Isn't that great? Now that'll look really close now because of the value, its value being extremely dark. It dries pretty quickly into the paper. The paper absorbs it pretty quickly, but it's made a difference, hasn't it? That wrinkle texture's nice, isn't it? What do you think? It gives a lovely texture to the tree. I think so anyway. And you might, if you wanted to invest in mid-ground paper that's more expensive, it will be thicker and it won't buckle and wrinkle the same. That old tree on the left, it's just so much character. Really, really fascinating. And I'm laying it on pretty heavy with the tea. And you know, it's almost magical. Like I've said to you many times, I've never got bored with this. Because I'm never sure exactly how it's going to turn out, you see. So it's an adventure for me. It's an adventure with me, with my drawing implements, in this case the carbon sticks and the watercolor brush with the tea on it. It's an adventure. I never quite know where it's going to end up, and that's the exciting thing about this creative process. And the concept stage for artist involvement in production, there is a lot of creativity, and this is what makes this area of commercial art extraordinarily fascinating. Is the concept artist has so much influence on the production. He's nailing down a look and a feel that the art director wants. And it's very therapeutic working with a paintbrush and water with tea on it. Great combos, right? I just adding a bit of texture there with the lines. Just do the wee bits of texture there, and it helps, doesn't it? Visually, it helps. It helps give this feeling of organic quality nature. It's fast, and you know, later on in production pipelines, when you have these concept artists later on, as this goes through the production pipeline, there are other artists who will do a more finished example of this to go on film. But just from a personal, individual point of view, I've always been more in love with the concept stage. And back to me go. Now the go with the sun here, this sun coming through to me is a key visual hook. So I'm attempting to force the viewer who's looking at this picture to go to that area. Why? Because I've got the important bit of the story and I don't want him to be distracted by other details, and that's important. So the more detail you do, the more of the distraction you create for your viewer, and that can be a good or a bad thing. But if you know what it is you're doing, that makes you more powerful at communicating your story. So to know these things is to help you compose in a way that's much more strategic. Look at the bits of light coming through there, isn't that beautiful? And again, it's fast, just strips of the chalk, and I'm pressing in certain parts and leaving out in other parts. Do you see that? So I'm trying to get this light dapple effect that floods through the forest at different times of day when you can see the sun. And again, because I went up into the mountains, I love going up into the mountains when I can, is you have this memory, this association, as opposed to it just being from a photograph and you haven't traveled to the place. But because I've actually traveled and gone to the location that I'm inspired by, I have an emotional connection. And that's what makes the difference between good art and great art, is the designer, the artist, has an emotional connection with the subject that he's depicting. Just getting these little bits of light hitting the branches here and sides of the tree. Not too much, again, because I don't want too much distraction. Yeah, the marks on the giraffe are amazing. And I'm just gesturing again, not spending too long on them. Yeah, he's magic, the giraffe. So I got these tendrils coming off him, and you go, but that giraffes don't have that. Well, that's the fun thing about concept. You're really drawing on things literally that are more of the feeling of something. And I'm trying to convey this feeling of magic in the forest. And that outline, I'll blend that outline in, maybe, but as an aesthetic. And what I mean by aesthetic, I mean by a style. I'm trying to get an effect. It's like a halo or light rimming effect around these characters. In photography, it would be called light rimming or rimming. And so the sides of the tendrils now are catching the light. I just want this magical ambience, this magical atmosphere. I'm thinking of little fireflies. I used to look at the fireflies when I lived in Florida, and the other place I'd seen fireflies is in Peru in the Andes. And again, I like going up into the mountains, and it's really interesting the little things you remember, and then you put those into your pieces, you see. So your life experience, as you see different things and experience different things, it becomes a library of thoughts, and then you manifest them into your picture, and it's those little things that make the difference. I want to stick a couple of forest sprites into this. Sprites or angels or whatever you want to refer to them as, and I like the idea of magic in pieces. From a storytelling point of view, it's a great device for telling story, and so I'm just adding these in. I might not, if I was developing this into a film production, I might not include them at the end. But again, with concept design, depending on the script and the different elements of story, they may or may not be added. It really depends. So this character that's sat on the giraffe is pointing up to the goat and giraffe, and the other one behind is holding the top of the head of the other character, and they're kind of like little wings, or maybe kind of like this aura coming off the character. So it's a feeling of magic that I'm trying to get here. See how I block things in again, just a bunch of simple shapes. And a little heart at the top. Little heart, and then I outline it. And look at the depth that's been created here. The very darkest parts close to us and blocking the light. And as things look like they're receding back into the distance, I've got some very bright values mixed with these very soft I use of the carbon, just very soft. Little stars, pixie dust. I'm thinking here, the little fairy in Peter Pan, and the little pixie dust that comes off that. So I'm kind of like a magpie, a visual magpie. I'm taking all these things of lots of things I've watched over the years, and just adding them to the scene. Maybe little bits of pollen, magical pollen coming off near the magic tree, and it's kind of fun. And you know, I'll try here for a bit. This might not work, but again, this is the stage to try it early on in concept, is to try things out and don't worry, you know. So we'll see. Might be a bit too much of a distraction, but I'll draw out the basics and then I'll see from there, and that's how we find out. Yeah, so I'm going to soften it, like it's more like it's glowing. The hard line is too much of a distraction, maybe, and I still don't know if it. I want to draw these little like ethereals flying through the forest, thinking of my Victorian 19th century symbolist artists. They would do a lot of magical paintings. A lot of their influences have affected a lot of painters artists and concept artists in the 20th and 21st centuries. So these trails of pixie dust coming off them. Again, I don't know. I might come back to those in a minute. So I'm just going to dilute that effect and making a glow all the way through, and that takes your eye more to the giraffe and goat. And let's get more harder contrast on these edges. It's really like a painting, isn't it? Except I'm doing it with charcoal, chalk, and a hanky. And then the edges really dark. Drawing your eye in to where I want the staging to occur. The staging being with the main actors in this. Goat, giraffe, and the two little sprites, and maybe the left side as well. Let's balance that out. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. This has been a fun adventure for me, and I hope you have fun coming up with your idea. And here's a 1 minute time lapse animation. Thank you for watching.